I'm doing a little bit of recycling because I'm quite sustainable. So this came from the presentation that I did earlier this year, and there's 54 slides, and I've got 15 minutes, so we're going to go on a very quick tour. But I've been really interested. I've recently taken on a role 18 months ago in local government, and as a citizen, you're always thinking, oh, the bloody council doesn't do anything, and once you become a councillor, you think, okay, why are people sort of hitting me all the time with these questions that aren't relevant to me or the council? So I started thinking that perhaps if we adopted some service design methods, we could start developing as councillors some meaningful conversations with the community, and that could possibly help us to inform public development of different policy, and it could help us to make decisions that might allow us to, as councillors, innovate around the way we deliver the services that are expected by us from the community, because council staff are really flat out doing all the stuff that they need to deliver, and they're not responsible for us. And the dynamic is really interesting. So I put on my academic hat from UNSW, and then I also been involved in Social Innovation Sydney, where I look at how we can innovate socially using design tools. And I went into my role at Pittwater Council and started looking at how we can contribute. So Pittwater's pretty unique. It's the insular peninsula here on the map in Sydney. We are Summer Bay. If you want to hop on the bus and go and get a bite of ice cream from Mouth up at Beach Camp. But we've got lots of, we've got more beaches than any other local government area in New South Wales, if I understand it right. And we've got that beautiful big stretch of water. So everyone in our community, look, everyone, it's a Liberal seat. It's safe. Bronwyn Bishop will never get elected out. She will have to die there before she leaves. But if you think about the values of our community, we're one of the greenest communities in Sydney because everyone loves their local environment. Even so much so that the Lego Club of Pittwater has made their own map. We've got a creative community, and there it is, Pittwater out of Lego. But basically, it's we're a very new, very engaged council. We're really interested in getting to know our community. A lot of the councillors were sort of quite singular issue related, focused on their own particular local government area within Pittwater, and really needed to get a broader understanding of all the different community groups that we were working with. So our mayor was really keen for us to engage with these community groups. And one of the problems that we had with it, community groups all had their own agenda but didn't realise that they were all on the same page, and in fact there was a little bit of tension or conflict between these community groups. And so we decided to be a bit preemptive, a bit proactive and collaborative around local and regional issues, and I think the staff were very nervous. They came up to our first meeting with the community groups and they hadn't been to anything, so we must have behaved ourselves. Dave's up the back there, she's really nervous now. But basically the staff produced this really awesome document at the same time that we were doing this. They were just finishing off their integrated planning framework, and apparently ours is really good. We always get ticks from all the bodies that have to approve it. And they'd sort of been communicating with the community as well over a long and extended period, and it was very specific in its purpose and intent, the way they produced these documents. It's also very nicely structured, and within the confines of what they're allowed to do with this document, there's not a huge amount of room to innovate or explore, but as councillors we were outside of that, so we could explore a bit. And of course we're not involved in developing this. This is an operational thing, and we're on a leadership level. Now when you become a councillor, one of the things you realise is when you're just a local person, if you want to engage with other people in the community, it's really easy. But as soon as you become a councillor, anything related to the council, you're removed by 1 degree. So it has to go through the council and the right staff to communicate with your community. So all of a sudden, you don't have access to the community like you used to do. And instead of having normal conversations at the supermarket, if someone recognises you, you will have a conversation on one of these 4 topics, which is why my husband now does the shopping. And if you want to talk to staff, when you're a citizen, you just ring up and say, I'd like to talk to so-and-so, and generally you get through. But once you become a councillor, you can only talk to them through their manager. So again, all these ways that you had as a member of the community to consult with the council disappear, and you're supposed to be representing the community and the council. So it's a bit of an interesting thing. So we have all these assumptions that we have to make and how we're going to Diane's laughing up the back. Is this your experience too? Yeah. Right, so there's assumptions that we have about our community because we don't get to talk to them as directly as we like to. And the assumption is that this is all that they're interested in. Because that's all they tell you, all the complaints you get. So you don't get anyone ever ringing up, well, I had one email this year saying, thank you, you've done a good job. It's always like, this is terrible, this is wrong, fix it now, fix it now. Otherwise, no one really cares about what's happening in local government. And what I was thinking is we as councillors need a little bit of deeper knowledge than that. And so with the mayor, we set up this thing called the RAD group. It's a very sexy name. It stands for Residents, a Residents Association Design Group. And we formed it in late 2012. And the idea is that it is a forum for community discussion, a forum where we can update the community groups before the knowledge goes out to anyone else, so that they feel like they've got the good oil soon. They feel engaged and involved, and it's a very relaxed information exchange. And what I suggested to the mayor was, well, let's use this as an opportunity to get some deeper knowledge about our community. And so I had to think about how can I use design methods, because I'm comfortable with them, to engage with these people and with this community and innovate, get something innovative out of it for both them and us. So we were working with the usual suspects. So again, in every community there's particular people who are more involved than anyone else, and they're generally involved in multiple parts of the community, and they've also got their own assumptions and agendas, and we're still trying to get beyond these assumptions. So dealing with these same people tends to always bring up the same results, but if we maybe can get them talking differently, having different conversations, we might get some different things. So we're getting beyond the assumptions, we're getting beyond hopefully local sticking points by having discussions with them. And we're hoping to get these groups to start to share and learn from each other. How do we do this? We want to find that deep knowledge. The approaches that I decided to take was a design. Does everyone understand design thinking? No, okay, and service design thinking. So design thinking to people from the outside looks a little bit like this. You've got a question that goes through this quite amorphous, crazy project phase, and then something comes out at the end that's of value. I think Apple used that to make everyone think that they're magical. This is my version of it. So you basically look at the question that you're looking, you give yourself a definition, then you, within that definition, to undertake some research, then you generate some concepts and ideas. You might prototype and test them, like we're hearing of in the previous presentation. Then you'll choose an option that suits best, evaluate it against your research and your definitions, and then you'll implement it. You'll learn from that, and then you'll iterate it for the next cycle. So this is how you get your iterative circular process happening. The Americans like to complicate it. They make it look like this, with lots of extra emotional words in it. And I'll try to provide this to people later. The British make it look like the dollar's bra. It's much simpler. You discover, so your expansive stage. Then you get it back down to a brief, so you define it. And then you go through another exploration stage, so a divergent stage of development of your ideas, come up with a concept reduce, back down, and you have something that you can deliver. So I thought, maybe we could use this divergent, convergent thinking thing to get our groups to think a bit more about what's happening in the local area. So for each of the RAD sessions, I used a model where I would ask 3 questions. The first one was a discovery question. The second was I would then have to, on my feet, think about what have I discovered generally, and then like 2 minutes later, so can you define this for me? So we define something, and then I go, oh, okay, we've got these definitions, let's develop something. So we actually came up with an output at the end of each session, which only ran for an hour and a half, and people thought that stuff was happening, which was really good. The deliver is a bit hard because we then have to reflect back upon what we've learnt as a group, then go to staff through their manager and talk to them about what are we actually doing in council, because often you don't know what everyone's doing. It's quite a large organisation. Are we doing stuff that's, what have we found out? Are you doing stuff that addresses this? What else could we do? These are some ideas that came up. How could we implement that? And then we could report back to the community groups that, we've got a notice of motion coming to council that we're going to do community gardens or something, whatever has come up. And so we could then demonstrate that we've been proactive as their local representatives. We'd acted on something that they were interested in. So it gave us the option to develop some policy. It gave us an opportunity to have discussions with staff and understand why things were doing different things, and have constructive conversations rather than reactive conversations. And it allowed the community to work together, which they weren't actually necessarily doing. So we had a few rules, again, like brainstorming. We had to be inclusive, everyone needed to be inclusive, we had to integrate everyone's opinions, everyone needed to behave collaboratively and be constructive, and we needed to be outcome oriented. So our first session, of course, used the ubiquitous post-it notes. And my question was, and this is when everyone was a bit sort of like, why are we here? A lot of suspicion, because there's a lot of suspicion in the local community about what we do and what our agenda was. And I said, well, let's start in a really positive way. Let's ask everyone what they love about Pittwater, because all these people have these community groups because they love Pittwater. And what was really interesting was that there were 5 major common themes, and they mirrored perfectly what the staff had come up with in the preparation of their community plan, which made us feel like we might be doing something right. And we felt really good because we were able to contribute 2 more points to that plan. But I think it also meant that I think our community is fairly consistent in what's going on. So once we established to all the community group members that they were all on the same page, we were able to open that up and ask them, what are your major concerns and what do you want the future to be? And this gave us some really good ideas to identify problems, areas that we could look at in the future. So we had 5 categories, a whole bunch of problems. We used post-it notes because everyone loves post-it notes. And I failed Mark stick Dawn's instructions on how to peel them off properly, so they were all over the place. But some of the outcomes were that the residents' associations realised they had more in common than they thought. One of the unanticipated effects of this has been that they're now all banding together and lobbying much more strongly. And that's not a bad thing. It means that we're stimulating some good things to happen within the community. And what we're getting, which is fantastic, is not people coming to us with problems anymore, more than solutions, which is, as a councillor, a wonderful thing, because people will come to you and say, blah, 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 this is wrong. It's like, well, what do you want me to do? Whereas if they come to you and say, look, we've identified this problem and we think this might work, it's a much more constructive conversation that you can have. We also meant that the councillors would be getting known by other members of community groups. Another unintended outcome of this was that we have 3 wards. Everyone in their ward used to only lobby their ward councillors. Now the residents groups lobby all the ward councillors because they now realise they've got 9 people that they can influence rather than just 3. But it's good because you've got 9 more opinions to be added to what they're wanting to be addressed. And we started producing artefacts. So our first artefact was looking at the different categories that we put up. So the first one was, and this reflects the community strategic plan titles that the staff have developed. We looked at what are their concerns around integrating the way we live with our built environment. How do we enhance the working and learning of our community? How do we value and care for the natural environment? How should we lead an effective and collaborative council? And how do we support and connect the community? So we went straight to natural environment because that was the #1 priority, which was a really interesting for everyone. Is it?
It's 13 minutes.
Okay, almost. So we went to look at canopy cover first, and what's great is that we've actually been able to bring a notice of motion to council now about some of the issues raised. But what contributes to canopy loss was really interesting. So we produced this sort of very rough document, which then was sent out as a readable artefact to our tree with growth rings. But we were able to demonstrate to the public, the people in the Residents Association, that it's not just council that's responsible for different things. There's state government and federal government policies, and so sometimes when you bring us a problem, it's not about us solving it. It might be someone else's responsibility, and also that public and residents can have control over different situations that they need to deal with. So this was really useful because we could then go back and say, okay, you're worried about loss of canopy. There's this policy, which is our policy, but we could add things like we can have more information days on how to replant, we could do more bush regeneration, you as a community could become more active in your bush regeneration groups. We can give plants out every time a baby's born at Maidavale Hospital that they can plant, someone can plant in the yard, these sorts of things. So the outcome was that we then identified the staff that could have addressed some of these touch points. They reported back to us on existing programs, so we could then take that information back to our community members at the next meeting. We could then work on developing some new policies that were needed, and meant that everyone had a clearer understanding of who contributed what and when, and also what parties are involved in delivering different things. So we then went on to look at parking, and the methods that we used were experience mapping and also some profiling. And we got some great diagrams of how to get up steep hills without using cars. So I think it's a roller skate with so I mean, people were having fun at these. Should we have valet parking across Pittwater? I'm sure lots of people would like that. And we stack cars. But we identified here that we actually don't have as many parking problems as we thought we had. And in fact, it was just people not being aware of where they could park or other services that were available, and that the community needs to understand that Pittwater's got a density enough now that you can't always park outside the front of the shop that you want to go to. You might just expect to walk 5 minutes and skim things across the whole of Sydney. That's actually not a big distance to walk, so that was a good one. So we all understand the issues, we can clarify who's responsible. Again, there's state, federal and local, and it allowed us to, again, to talk to staff in a more informed way. So then we looked at connectivity, and we included our chambers of commerce, and we looked at social economic implications of transport and how that can impact on the community enjoyment and how they physically and culturally interact with the local government area. So we asked, what does connectivity mean to people? And it was really funny, most people didn't see it as a transport issue, but rather as a community issue. How do we support this? That's us looking at. And then the last session, 1 minute Jax, which was really interesting for us, was what does effective collaboration and leadership as us as councillors mean? And there are some really interesting results which I haven't finished putting together, but we've got great maps out of this that I need to get a better graphic on. But what's an effective council? And if you look at a lot of the words here, that's not actually within our remit of our roles, but it's what the community expects of us. So I think we now need to sit down with councillors and understand what people expect of us and how that might change the way we behave and the way we conduct ourselves. We don't do things badly, it's just how can we improve that. What does leadership mean is another really good question. So has it been worth it? Yes, the community feels they've been heard. We're having better unfiltered and constructive conversations. There's a really obvious alignment with our strategic plans, and we're getting much better levels of trust between us and the community because we're action oriented and we're already delivering outcomes and we're having this proactive conversation. Everyone has a better understanding of the different systems, so we're not under as much pressure to deliver on areas that we can't deliver in, and they're getting to know all the councillors, and we'll have questions at the end. Thanks, Jack.